Hi, in the previous video we talked about how to add and delete item from a Prolog list, correct? Now in this video we will talk about a very interesting problem in Prolog called how to find a list, whether that particular list is a sublist of another list or not. Okay, it's kind of a problem very similar to whatever we have discussed about whether a particular object is a member of Prolog list or not. This is basically very kind of generalized problem we will be dealing with today, and we'll see how to fix that one or how to find the solution for that one as well. Now for this video, this particular video, like how to concatenate two lists, is necessary because we will be using similar kind of concept today. Basically the same concat predicates we have developed in this particular video, we will be reusing them to find the sublist of a particular list. Okay, so that the solution of that problem will be much simpler, and Prolog already has a sublist predicate predefined, so we will talk about those things later, but this will be just like we are trying to do some kind of learning about the Prolog list, and while doing that we are just trying to fix some kind of, or basically try to work on some problem solving as well. Okay, it will be fun. Now before we start, probably let's talk about this guy, the concatenation one, right? So if I just go back to my Prolog, and if you remember over there we discussed about these two predicates, we developed basically these two predicates over there, right? So when I am just giving two input list over here, so this guy will basically give me the third list, which will basically the concatenated version of those two input lists there, right? Now how it is doing it, basically for the first list we are comparing element by element wise, right? So once we are exhausting all the elements of the first list, so at that time it is becoming the becoming a very simpler problem where we are basically having a empty list as a first list and second list as the second list over here. So that time to fix that one we have basically defined this fact over here, right? And which is also true as well, because if I have an empty list as my first argument and another list as my second argument, the concatenation version of those two lists should be the same as the second list over there, right? So probably let's take an example. So if I just post a query something like this one, concat, let's give a list called A comma B comma C here. Okay, and let's have another list called D comma E over here. Now if I pass a variable over here, let's say capital C, which will hold the concatenated version of those two lists, so ideally it will give me a final list called A B C D E over here, right? Now this was the small recap about what we have discussed in that video. Probably if you want to know more details, I have explained it in that particular video. You can take a look over there. Now in that video we also talked about a very interesting use case of this concat predicate, where it's basically generates like different kinds of input list if you give a output list over here, something like this one. So if I just have concat, okay, let's say I will have, instead of giving a particular list as an input of this concat, I'll just pass variable over here, okay, L1 and L2 here, two variables which will hold the two input list over here. I'm just giving a output list A B C D E here. Let's copy this guy. Okay, so let's see what we have discussed this one as well in that video. So what will happen? So Prolog will basically generate all the different combinations of this input lists over here, right? All the possibilities of the two different input lists over here. And if I just get all the possibilities over here, if you see it, like this could be one of the possibilities where L1 will be this full list A B C D E and L2 will be a blank list, right? So this is also the concatenated version of the list, or it could be like A B C D as the L1 and L2 is only E, something like this one over here, right? like all the possible combinations for L1 and L2. Now the question is, can we use this guy, this particular concept, to build another predicate which will basically determine like whether a particular list is a sublist of another list or not. Let's say if I just want to know whether A comma B, if I just have an input list called A comma B, is a sublist of this whole list or not. Okay, so in that case my sublist will be having, so let's develop on the fly as well. So let's create a predicate called sublist, which will have two inputs or arguments here. A list called S, this will be the input list. Another list called L, this will be the actual list for the bigger list over here. So we want to determine whether S is a sublist or of L or not. Okay, so now what will be happening over here? Now if you see it here, I can basically get all the possibilities over here using the concat operator or concat predicate over here for a particular list, right? So by the way, this is called the list decomposition of the list, right? All the possibilities of a particular list, if we want to divide a list into two sublists over here. Okay, so now if you see, I am already introducing the concept of sublist. Now if you see it here, like all these different combinations over here of L1 and L2, right? One of the combination is this guy over here. If you see it, L2 is DE and L1 is AB, correct? And this will be helpful in our case, right? Because if I just want to, basically if I just divide this list in such a way that the list I want to get the sublist, like the sublist I am talking about is, let's say in this case I am talking about A comma B, I can get a sublist as a part of L1 or L2 as well, right? Like this one in our case, A comma B. Definitely one of these combinations will hold L1, either L1 or L2 will hold the A comma B over here. We will talk about that situation as well, whether to use L1 or L2 or not. But for now, at least we are getting some idea, like it could take at least the A or B, A comma B as a part of, if I just divide this list, this full list into two lists over here, we could get A comma B as well. But think about it, like what if I want to know about whether C comma D is part of this whole list or not? But it is not having this one, right? But it is having, it is coming up over here. So if I just think about a solution, like if I want to break this list as well into two lists, it may happen that I could get C comma D as well over here. So I think you are getting where I am going. I just want to break the input list and then try to see whether I break in such a way that I will get the S, which means the list I want to find it as a sublist of my L or not, that main list. So I can solve this particular problem over here, right? Now if you see it, let's try to use that idea over here to see whether we can find the sublist over here. So our problem is very simple. We want to find A comma B as a sublist of this whole guy over here or not. Okay, so now if you see our concat, this one is basically generating lot of combinations over here, right? Which we have basically written this predicate till now, right? This concat over here, which is for the output of which is a lot of combinations of L1 and L2 over here. Now we want to find it out whether S is a sublist of L or not over here, correct? So now if I just write another concat over here and check, so for among all these possible combinations, okay, can we have a combinations again? Let's say concat. So if I just take off these possible combinations and let's say these combinations over here, okay, and further divide either this L1 or L2 in such a way that I'll get S, then I can easily say S is a sublist of L over here, right? So that means what I am checking is first I am breaking my initial list into two different lists, and so that means I'll get all the possible combinations, and among those combinations, is there any combination where if I break either of this L1 or L2, I will get S and another list. I can use anonymous variable over here because I do not care about that list, but I want to break either L1 or L2. Let's say L2 for now. We will reason through it as well. Why L2 or why not L1, or if we can use L1 or L2 or interchangeably or not. Okay, but this should be sufficient over here, correct? Now let us try to reason through it. Which one I have to use, L1 or L2 over here? Which one I have to further divide again? So for that, let us try to just see it how Prolog is basically generating this list combinations over here. And if you see it, like the first combination it generated is this one, which is very much boundary condition, right? Because it created one full list with that actual list and an empty list over here for L1 and L2 over here, correct? Similarly for this one as well. Now if you see it, the next combination it has basically generated is like it removed the last element from the list, correct? E, and then keep the other four elements over here. Similarly, when it generated the next two combinations, it basically removed the last two elements from the list and keep the other three over here as a part of L1 over here, right? Similarly for next combination, it took basically CDE, then BCDE, something like this one over here. So looks like when it is generating the L1 or basically the L2, it is generating from the, by taking the elements from the last, it is going above, like from last to first it is going above, like this one, right? Like E, DE, CDE, BCD, something like this one over here. So if you see it, like if you see all the L2s over here, it will be something like, here it is empty, then E, then DE, then CDE, something like this one, right? BCDE, something like this one. And if you see L1 over here, in L1, as it is generating L2 by taking the elements from the last to first, so L1 is basically losing one by one element from its last, right? If you see it like ABCDE, then ABCD, ABC, something like this one over here. Now let us try to reason through it over here. Like, is there any combination? Now if I just go back over here now again, so is there any combinations exist where if I break L into L1 and L2, that combination, and because this comma is an and operator over here, right, which you already discussed, and if I break L2 or L1, I have just given L2 for now, L2 into another separate list, like all the, if I break into L2 into two separate lists using this concat operator, is there any combination exist where I will get S over there as a part of that combination over there? Okay, so basically here we are talking about breaking, two times breaking using the concat operator, get all the combinations and then find the matching combination where S is a part of that combinations over there, right? So now let us try to reason through it with what we are going to use. Either we are going to use L1, L2, or we can use both L1 or L2. Let's reason through it. We will, so now the main problem is we are trying to find, let us write it down somewhere. Okay, so we will try to use two use cases. The initial use cases, I have A comma B. I want to find this one as a, whether it's a sublist of that big list or not, right? Or let's take another example, let's say C comma D. If this works for both, then I think it should be working for all the possible scenarios. Now let's first take A comma B and let's try to reason through it with L1. So if I just take all the possible combinations of L1, okay, and break it through into two separate lists, anywhere I can get A comma B. Now if I just see it over here, this is one of the combinations of L1 over here, which is nothing but our main list over here. And here when we basically decompose it, one of the possible combination was this one over here, a comma b and then c d e over here. So looks like using L1 it may work over here, right? Because I am getting a comma b as well when I decompose this combination over here. Okay, now let's see whether it's working for C comma D or not, because this is the second testing condition. We want to check it out. Right now let's try to reason through it whether we will get C comma D or not when for any of the combinations of L1 if we just break it down. So for this combination, how it will break down, I will never get C comma D, because if you see this is same as my main list and we are never getting C comma D as a separate list over here. Let's start with this combination A, B, C, D. Now if I just use concat to get the decompositions over here, so how it will create the list? So first initially it will break over here, right? It will create two lists A, B, C and D. Here itself C and D are getting breaked, right? So I will not get C comma D for at least this combination, this version of the L1. Then other versions anyway I do not have D over here, right? So that means looks like for C D the L1 is not a suitable list to break it further or decompose it further over here. What about L2? Let's test it out with all our L2s over here, right? So initial use case A comma B. If I can I get A comma B from L2? From this L2, no. At least from this L2 also no, because there is only single element. This L2 also no. This L2 no, because there is no A over here. This L2 as well no. So looks like I have A over here, and let's try to decompose it. So how it will be breaking it? Again, first it will separate this guy over here. So A, B, C, D and D, E. Then another combination will be, it will separate out D and E. Then it will be A, B, C and then D and E. Then it will separate out these three guys, because from last to first it is going. Then I will get A, B over here, right, as a part of that compositions over there, right? So AB, for AB it's working here. Now whether it's working for C and D or not, let's do it again. Okay, now this combinations anyway I will not get C and D, because it will break further, right? So it will basically create a list from D and E, right? So in that case it will never be C and D together. Now whether this L2 will give me C and D, again no, because when it will create the list with D and E, again C and D will be separated. Now if you see this L2, this combination over here, when first it will break at point E, I will get another list C and D over here. So looks like for C and D also it's working over here. So that explain me I should be using L2. So that's why I know I did it before. That's why I know I will be using L2 over here. But I just explained it over here why it will not be L1. It has to be L2 over here. Okay. So if I just save it, let's try to test it over here. I will make it. Okay, I selected everything. I think that's why it is giving me this error. Fine. Oh, okay, there is a singleton variable L1 over here. Like it does not, I have not used it over here. I can use anonymous variable over here as well, right? I do not care about what this guy will up to, right? What Prolog will assign, what list Prolog will assign, until unless I am breaking into two lists over here, right? I do not want to use it as a separate variable over here. So I am using an anonymous variable here as well as here, because I do not care about these two lists over here, right? So but Prolog will be creating it over here as well. Okay, that's important. So that's why initially I have given L1 and L2, but now we understood the concept, so it should be fine. So make and then consult it. Okay, so that's fine. This because I already consulted it before, so that's why it is giving me this error, but this is fine. So now let us try to test it out. So our predicate is sublist over here, correct? So sublist. So let's take the similar one, a comma b over here. I want to check whether this guy is a sublist of this big guy over here. Okay, and if I just do it, Prolog should be saying me true, because that's the way we have designed it. And let's say C comma D here, right? It should be telling me true as well. And let's say A comma C, or let's say C comma E here. Like, now the logic we have implemented over here is this sequence is also mattered over here, right? Like, there should not be any other element between these two elements, which is the case over here. In this case, Prolog should be saying me false over here as well. Okay, so looks like our code is working, and as we do for all other Prolog programs, we can pass a variable over here, let's say x here. If I just want to get all the possible sublists over here, I can just do it over here. Okay, so this is how Prolog will be working it over here. So hopefully it was interesting, and anyway, in future videos we will gain more knowledge about Prolog, and then probably this may not be required, but this is fundamental stuff. If we understand this one, right, the programming in Prolog will be much easier over there. Okay, so hopefully this video was helpful. See you in the next video.